All right, everybody. I'm joined by Emilio Lopez, who is an awesome 2D and 3D motion designer with actual experience in the past doing social media marketing as well, and being a TikTok personality, which I learned through snooping on your LinkedIn, sir. So, Emilio, thank you for taking the time to join us. How are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing awesome, man. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Awesome, dude. Let's just jump right into it, man. So, obviously, I could go through your LinkedIn, I could go through your website, I can go through all of it and see who you are, but I want to hear from you, dude. Where did the career journey, where did it all start? Like, where did it begin?
So it began with making, I'm pretty sure a lot of us have been through this software. It was Adobe Media Flash, and then a combination of that and Pivot. If you've heard of that before, it was like just you put in like whatever sprite you want. It also gives you like a default stick animation or a stick figure guy, and you just kind of go frame by frame and you animate it. And I was just mostly inspired by like those stick figure fights that back when YouTube was like the Wild West. Those stick figure fights that would come up on my page and I'd be like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing in the world. I mean, it was the best thing in the world because you didn't have to know a design. You put a stick figure on a screen, you just make it look cool. So at the most, all you needed to do was know at least like some anatomical design, like how things work, and then some of the basic principles of like, add some exaggeration, add some anticipation. And so that's where I kind of started with just like animating stick figures. And after that, I mean, that was like in elementary school. After that, I was like making stop motion videos with like my phone, my flip phone, my Sony Ericsson. I'll never forget it. And I would just like do stupid stuff, like take a water bottle and like move it across the room or whatever. And then when my professional career started, I actually had fallen into animation. Like it wasn't at all on purpose. I was kind of scrambling right out of high school to just get my career going in like anything. So I was doing like the typical almost sales callsy kind of thing where like I was calling startups, businesses, you name it. And I ended up calling an incubator, which is like a startup place to get kind of like building and revenue and stuff like that, investments. And I met this guy over the phone named Jim Bowie, and he had connected me to Justin Mitchell, Hunter McKinley, and Jordan Walker, which were kind of like at they made their own design agency called So Friendly down here in St. Cloud. We always said we were based in Orlando because nobody knows what the heck St. Cloud is outside of Florida. So that's where I kind of started my thing. And when animation was really needed was when we were having to launch on Product Hunt, which is like a place where, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. You go there to hunt for products, and that's where startups kind of like launch their product. They put like a mini page, they have a launch video, they have, an explanation and then a link to go to their website. And the one thing we were kind of missing was the ability to make a launch video. And I kind of just did that thing where you're asked if you could do something and you just kind of say yeah, even though you have no idea on how to do any of it. So at the time, I had, for no like explicable reason, a license for Adobe Premiere. Just I kind of had like Premiere, and like I don't know, it was one suite that just didn't include After Effects. And so I was like, oh yeah, I could totally do a launch video. And they were like, okay, sweet, we need it by like next week. And I had no idea what this is my first time doing it, so I don't know that this is like unrealistic. But I'm like, let's do it. We're a scrappy startup and I'll just put something together. And so I made the entire thing in Premiere. So from then on, you could pretty much call myself like a masochist for the next, I don't know how many months, but every time we needed a launch video or an explainer or an FAQ onboarding video, it was done in Premiere. And so the great part that came out of that was every time we launched, the number one question we'd get was, unfortunately, I guess, wasn't like about our product. It was more about like, hey, how did you hire a whole ass studio without having any funding whatsoever to like make your video? And then this kept happening and happening. And I caught sight of it, but I didn't say anything. And it wasn't until the second launch where we kind of like updated like the whole app and we did like a version 2, they're like, dude, this is like Apple Video. Like, tell us who you're hiring, because you're doing it obviously for cheap. And that part was true, but they were like, no, dude, it's just this one guy. And so they pointed it to me, and then from then on, I had gotten my first client, which shout out to Rachel from Millie Giving, best person in the world. I mean, she's still with me, best client in the world. I can never ask for any better. But yeah, I mean, she was my first client, and then from there, it was just video after video after video. And obviously, I had transitioned away from Premiere because I needed to do way better and, do a lot more complex things. And so yeah, that's kind of like where my career started. It was the startup world, but I guess origin point was just being inspired by those super cool stick figure animations.
I love that it started from, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's animation versus animator, right? Isn't that the series? Yeah. That stuff was really cool back in the day, dude. I remember seeing get like 1 million views or whatever, and like back then in YouTube time, it was like, whoa, that's a big video. It was cool, man. One of the things I love too is that you worked in the incubator. I was also in an incubator for a while, and the amount of like networking connections and really rapid growth you experience, like what you did, where it's like you walk in one day, it's like, cool, I'm gonna learn a completely new skill because I have to, and we're gonna figure it out. And you just rock it, man. You adapt. Great experience. I remember being there late nights. That part's not fun, but
yeah, no.
Yeah. I would eat the caffeine chocolate. Have you ever had caffeine chocolate before?
Oh my God, no.
Dude, it's basically like it's coffee. It's coffee and chocolate. You eat like the logo was like an owl or something, but you would like eat one. It was basically the equivalent to drinking a cup of coffee. And so you just eat in the break room, get back to work, eat in the break room, get back to work. It was like nonstop. Not great for your health long term. So hopefully we're both young while we're doing all this.
No, yeah. I remember the copious amounts of snacks I would eat just because like it was a really stressful environment being in a startup. But one of the quirky foods that we had was this full meal replacement called Soylent. And I don't know if you remember.
No way. You got,
yeah.
You're
literally.
Soylent, dude. Oh, man.
But what was funny was I had learned, I still loosely know the reference, but that was like the food that they gave back in like a dystopian type movie, right? Was it something like
Green? I think it was.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God. I felt like, I mean, there's a whole backstory to like this startup that there's bad blood and kind of things like that. But aside from that, I know I grew out of it and I learned a lot of experience, but it was kind of funny to see like the dystopianness of that movie and like how I felt kind of like parallel with the startup. And it was just like, wow, okay, this is like the weird puzzle piece that like is clicking. That shouldn't be. But anyways, yeah. Yeah, we had Soylent, and man, I had gained so much weight being in startup world. I was just literally like, because it was social media, so I could be on my phone. So it was literally like, all right, let's schedule this video, be on my phone, just mindlessly go to the kitchen, grab something, eat it. All right, what's the copy for this? Go back to the kitchen, grab like a drink, and yeah. And I didn't know they were meal replacers, so I would have like 2 in one sitting. And Justin would get mad at me because he would be like, where the fuck is my Soylent?
Oh my God. The one we worked at, they would charge you like for the snacks, which I think is completely fair to some places. But
okay.
It was just interesting because you're in an incubator because you're trying to make money to try to get your feet on the ground. And the whole time you're just spending like hundreds on like small snacks and stuff like that. And you're just looking at it and you're like, that's where the other half of rent's going, dude. Like, that's where it's going. That's why the rooms are cheap.
Literally.
It is a wild. I want to jump a little bit back, man. When I was going through your LinkedIn, though, I did see that you have personality on TikTok, and I was looking at the stats, dude. 3.78 million views in 2 months, 102,000 followers in 6 weeks, and an average of 1.76 million views per video, which is wild. I gotta talk about it, man, because you're coming from a social media background. Like, did you feel like did you want to do TikTok? Did it just kind of end up happening? And then how prepared were you since you're coming from being social media marketing background?
Like most things in my life, man, maybe this is a sign. It just kind of ended up falling into place. One of the startups, so like in the startup world, we have this thing, or at least for what we did, we would dog food, which is kind of like build a product for ourselves and then use it. So that way we know, okay, at least this thing works for us. And dog fooding is like that, the term to define that. So we made this app that it's called Backtrack. It's actually still available. And there's a whole backstory to that too. And it actually ties into Yak. But it has like a minute buffer. I'm pretty sure it works differently now, but it has a minute buffer. So like, say like I forgot to record something. You're like, oh shit, I just got something really cool, like really good nugget of knowledge, whatever. You pull it, you record it, and then it just like snaps back that like 60 seconds of like whatever just happened. And then you can save it somewhere else. So that was the idea. And it was really innovative and intuitive too. Like the UI worked perfectly. And so I just made a quick TikTok video of that. I'm like, dude, like imagine, and I was at college at the time. So I was like, imagine you're in college, you're one of your classes, you just snoozed off and you're like, your professor goes, oh, and that'll be on the exam tomorrow. And you're like, shit. Okay, let me grab as much as I can. You just backtrack it on your laptop, and then it uses the mic too. You backtrack it from your laptop, and you're done. And you got that knowledge. You didn't have to take notes. And eventually, it like transcribed your audio recording too. It was all this stuff. But anyways, that was like one of the first videos on TikTok that just completely blew up, and it just happened to be about one of the startups. And then from there, I guess it was just momentum on TikTok. I was also really early, so I had talked about TikTok to my college friends, and they're like, oh, isn't that for like 10-year-olds, you weirdo? Like, well, I mean, I didn't really care. I was getting a lot of views. And then it wasn't until I showed them, like, look, I have like 10,000 followers. I guess in their mind, it still didn't click to some, but they're like, because, what's 10,000 followers worth on a platform you have no idea about, right? It's like, I don't know, saying you have 1 million followers on Tumblr right now. It almost feels worthless. And so that's kind of like where it went off. It was just like tech SaaS / like tips and tricks or like quirky hacks videos that were just kind of put together, like how to get, and some of them were bordering on the edge of like against terms of service. So I'm not necessarily too proud of it. It was like things like how to get unlimited accounts for like Audible or something like that, so you can get a bunch of credits.
Oh man, you were clickbait, dude.
But it would actually work. It was like I would get a bunch of credits, and then from there you just have as many books as you want. So like it felt like clickbait, but these were things that like would actually work. But yeah, and then I was just like, TikTok isn't something I want to do. So then I just let it fizzle out. I don't know. Social media always had a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't really like it. I didn't like the person I had to be in order to do things. It was fun doing it, but it just felt like I was manufacturing consent for a stupid thing I just didn't really like. And that kind of goes for anything. Like I can tell people all day long what might be the best thing to do for marketing or social media, but I won't do it for myself because I just absolutely think I don't know, it's not fun being that kind of person, in my opinion.
Yeah, just putting on like persona for the video, stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, I definitely get that. One of the things interesting that you said was, you said you had people being like, it's not an app for kids or something like that, and I think that's hilarious in a sense because I feel like the youth got them old. Youth, it's like, well, youth power the internet, man. So like if you see an app really pop off, or you see like a group growing up, like let's take Be Real for example. Be Real, rest in peace, short-lived, not that great to be honest, but all of a sudden it's got tons of people using it for like a short span of time, and it's like, who are these people? And you find out, well, they're going to be high schoolers, middle schoolers, some college age people, whatever. And then from there, obviously, you have later people who come in that are older. We saw with TikTok even, that you said, as younger people on TikTok for a bit. And then now, when we talk to clients, it's like, well, there's actually a pretty big amount of like Gen X on TikTok now, older individuals, things like that. And some of them use it for news, which is interesting, could be dangerous, could be great. I don't know. Depends on what you look at, things like that. But it's interesting, man. So you got out of that, you moved on to motion graphics, doing design and so forth. I would love to jump into that and kind of talk about that journey there. What was the leap off like? Was it a pretty hard transition going in to that work and finding groups to work with?
It was hard in the sense that it was scary at first, because like it was still something I was very new to. And so I had known about like the principles of design, but I wasn't actively like applying them in my animation or design at all. I was just kind of winging it, man. A lot of the times I was just I always use the same reminder. I'm pretty sure everyone has like something similar, but like every time I started a project, I was like, how the fuck am I going to finish this in time? Like, this is scary. This feels weird. But I would always tell myself, this project's eventually going to be done. Like, whether you like it or not, like you're getting paid to do it. You have to do it. There's going to be a point in time where you're done and the project's like really great and it's online and the client's using it. So like it's that the time after that I kind of use to inspire myself to just keep going, solving the problem, whatever you're doing inside of the animation. But it's like the liftoff point was really scary. I mean, it was my first freelance client. Rachel, like I said, kind of like supporting my entire business. And it was at that point where I was like, okay, well, I need to like either find a different job that requires me to do animation at the very least, because it seems to be more fulfilling and I do better at that than social media, or I need to like find more clients. So at that point I was still off the momentum of the first startup. And so like I was still getting like requests. Rachel was even a freaking angel and like, referring me to people. So projects would kind of like trickle in. And right around like my third project, I think it was like with Fathom. I'm like gonna shout out everyone. It was there where I had actually been given an interview to join another like a marketing agency to do animation for. But then I was I got into like, I think LinkedIn was like the next biggest gig. No, Loop was a car insurance company out of Texas. And they were great, but same thing again. They cut. I mean, not really same thing, but they cut off the entire creative department. Like I thought it was just me because like the CEO was like, "Yo, we're kind of letting you go. We'll do a whole announcement later." I'm like, "A whole announcement? You're gonna fucking put me on blast? Like 30 minutes after this? Like I feel like I'm crying." And then he goes, "Yeah, the whole creative department's just gone." So like right then and there, like stupid, no feelings, Zoom call. Goodbye, guys. You don't work here anymore kind of style. And I was like, this is really fucked up. But then he goes, then everyone kind of leaves there. And I'm just like, this is just the pattern. It's like, I am scrambling for like freelance projects, trying to get a full-time job so I can be like a double dipper kind of thing. And then everything just kind of falls apart within 6 months. So it's like, I got into basically 3 layoffs, like 2 layoffs back to back. The next thing that happened was working for LinkedIn. And I think I'm still under NDA for that. So there's nothing else I can talk about it. But that was really great, paid the bills. And then after that, it was just working at PPK. And I've just stumbled upon it. My career is not fancy. There's no great story behind it. It was just struggle at the most. It was just struggle. Yeah. And ever since, I've just really been double dipping. I've been privileged enough to be able to use like the funds that we have to still be able to travel around the world. Like every December for the past, I think 2 years, me and my girlfriend Bella have gone to the UK, and we actually managed to go to like the meetups there in the UK, where I got to meet like Bobby, Ash, and I've even gotten a chance to meet Ramon, the owner of like the After Effects server over in Netherlands. And it's just been, so it hasn't just been like rock bottom, but it's been like extremes almost. And that to me probably points to a sign where it's like, I'm not like the best businessman, maybe. Or like for some reason I just have shit luck and like I can't keep the full-time job because I keep getting into layoffs. So far, fingers crossed, nothing's happened here at the studio. There's not been a reason to. We kick ass. Like our animation department is like the number 2 or 1 reason in some years why the entire company is making like a crap ton of money. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing roller coaster. But at the end of the day, despite all of that, I still love animation. Even if I went off into like a different career, I would just hope that I could somehow fit animation into it, even if it's just a freelance project or something like that. Yeah, I think this is definitely something that like will stick with me forever. Unlike, something like social media.
That's awesome though. That sounds like, you've landed at a stable place. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And that you're kind of, you're just rocking it out, man. So in that sense, do you at this point really work with any, like, are you client facing, or are you more just kind of at this point, like internal, like someone comes to you and says, we need this, you're not going to talk to the client. We're just going to keep it internal. Then we'll present to the client, things like that.
Mostly client facing. Yeah. I've only done a couple projects where it's just, internal, and I don't know which one I like more. I think I'm better at like client facing just because I like making friends, and it feels weird sometimes to just not see like the person you're making the thing for. Although I always get along no matter what with everyone. I just like making friends. I don't like to think of people as coworkers. Like I ended up playing video games with my lead animator on week 2 or something like that. He ended up asking me to be on one of his projects. I declined, but like, cause I just didn't have time. But one of his freelance projects while we were working, and I don't know, it's either it's me or like, again, shit luck that I just end up being friends with everyone, and it's a really great thing. Otherwise I probably would just be in the dirt right now or something like that. But yeah, I mean,
so it's a pretty powerful tool, man. Being able to, network, have those kind of soft skills like that and so forth. Especially, when you're doing motion design or something like that, where you can end up just kind of sitting in a dark room for hours on end. Yeah. If you let yourself, that is. Talking about, just general challenges with clients and so forth. What's kind of like the most challenging scenario you've dealt with working with clients?
I would just say there was a time where a certain set of projects were kind of like, there was a lot of automation involved in the workflow, and I had to adapt to it. And that was kind of like the hardest part, where I would basically just be considered like a champagne animator, where it was literally touch a button, it'd pull all the data from Excel. I had never seen anything like it. It would pull all the data from an Excel sheet and all the graphics from like a database online and just put it together for you. And the only thing you really had to do was make sure that like the tracking on the text for each moment or scene, whatever, was fine. The proper graphic was there. If there wasn't a graphic that it couldn't pull from, go and find one in the database or Frankenstein one together. The challenging part of that was adapting to that workflow, because of course with automation comes bugs, right? And so you oftentimes kind of wasted a lot of time fixing fixing a problem with the software caused. The other part of that challenge was kind of like feeling monotonous and not really fulfilling. I got that vibe at the beginning when I first took on the project. They even asked me like, you do more like creative work. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, well, how boring could this actually be? I love animation. And it wasn't until like, the automation part like kind of got introduced to me like a brick wall that I was like, okay, wow, it could really get boring. So, but at the end of the day, like I think that might be like my biggest challenge, because it was really, I mean, as stupid as it sounds, because you'd think, oh God, I'd love to just click a button and get paid. I struggled with like not being able to animate anything or like do what I considered was animation and design. It just felt really sucky. And so that was my biggest challenge, is like kind of like going through that hurdle, or going through that, like, I don't know, that the work, and just feeling like I'm okay with this at the end of the day. Yeah, it just wasn't fun. Other than that, I mean, you have your typical challenges where it's like, do this in like 4 seconds, please. I need this at the end of the day. Oh, and by the way, we don't even have a website up or a style guide. I think most of us have faced some sort of thing. I was being extreme there, but like that. But I feel like that almost comes with the career. You're always going to face that. So it's not really a challenge per se. It's just kind of like when it happens.
You say that's an extreme, but it's definitely not an extreme. There's multiple situations where I've seen a client not have a website, or at best they'll have a placeholder page with very out of brand stuff. Sometimes they'll even still have the template text still on it that they chose, and they won't have any branding or anything like that. And so in those situations, I typically do two things that help me a lot, and that is, number one, I'll either make a brand one sheet that will get sent to the client as well, and we'll be like, hey, here are fonts based on what you have, here are colors based on what you have, and this is what we're going to work off of for now. Or they'll get like a booklet that basically says, here are predetermined combinations we think are going to work for you. Select the one you want, and we're going to rock with that and call it a day. I think that's interesting, though, that you bring up how automation and just the boring aspect of it is a challenge. Because I think that's absolutely right. I think in the sense that, you know, you're hired as a creative because you're a creative person. You're not sit there just to hit a button, call it a day. And when there's just too much automation, it devalues what your whole toolkit is, because your toolkit isn't just After Effects. It's not just Premiere Pro. It's your critical thinking. It's your mindset. It's how you think. And you know, when you're just told to click a button and it automates everything, you look at it and going, why am I here? Because creativity is just kind of dying in a way.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun experience. It was amazing. At first I was in awe of like the automation. Like, how could you even do this? Like, pull graphics in from a database. And I'm a baby when it comes to the sciences of automation. I have friends that are just like complete geniuses, and they probably wouldn't be so shocked about it. But it was almost like a culture shock. And then Kate settled in like oh yeah, why am I here? What do you even need me for? And it just didn't feel good. But I moved past that. And since I've only been really just kind of chilling out, I still consider myself a double dipper because I do have freelance projects, but not as heavily on like the freelance side anymore as I used to. Would I like more? Sure. But I really love the team that I'm at right now, and it just feels good. And we have ebbs and flows, so we have like really relaxed time periods, and like right now we are super relaxed. We actually get a chance to plan out some social media content and like, you know, show out on Instagram and tell people what we can do and show people what we can do, which we haven't been able to do before. We've always talked about doing like personal projects together as a team, but now we actually get to do it. So that'll be really fun. But yeah, I love the team that I'm on right now. Shouts out to Jason. He's the best. He's my giant teddy bear. I love him. And yeah, I just love it.
I love opportunities where you're able to do personal projects with like your coworkers or team, because you don't get to do that often, to be honest. And when you do get to work together, it's, you know, for a client project, and at the end of the day, the client dictates what they want. And so sometimes you're just kind of left feeling a little empty, like, you know, maybe not you're not super proud of it. Maybe you're just like, nah, whatever, but it's what the client wanted. So it's like, cool. So I love personal projects for that reason, because you can get together and really kind of just like go all out creatively, you know, work up each other's strengths and so forth. So recommend that for anyone listening. If you got a team, do team projects.
Yes.
Use the brain and creativity that you have on your team, and let those suckers fly, dude. Let those people get out there and experiment.
Yeah. Like our junior animator, Haley, she kicks absolute ass at freaking like 2D illustration and character animation. I mean, it is just beyond me how someone has amassed that much skill in such little time. Like she's just amazing. And then Jason is an absolute wizard. I mean, like, he's a godsend. I've been able to learn so much from him. And, you know, I only think of myself as like a pretty bad animator. I maybe am just a little bit better how I think about myself as far as animation goes. But I mean, together we're pulling off some really fun stuff. Like I haven't felt this fulfilled in forever. So I highly recommend, if you can even just like eke it out a little bit, because we're doing just a 6-second animation, but we're going balls to walls, like ham on this little spot. So even if you can eke out just something, I'm finding like passion projects or side projects or just fun little things together with a team is like a really great experience.
Absolutely, man. Can't retweet that enough, or I guess repost now. Whatever. You've been freelancing for a while, man. And, you know, like you said, you kind of be bebopping all over the place just based on like where you want to go, based on kind of like just the job market, things like that. And so I imagine at this point, whether it's written down or not, you have a playbook in your head of like, here's how things need to go. Here's how I'm going to succeed at things like that. I'd love to kind of get some tips from you for anybody watching. What do you need to know when you get into freelance, and what are things you need to know to survive?
So I think the first milestone was the Freelance Manifesto, or this first stepping stone. Everyone kind of just pointed me to it. So that reading that helped a lot. A lot of the things are outdated at this point, like specifically reaching out to people, the templates that they use, etc. Because now that motion design or animation is kind of oversaturated, the things that those templates mention are just kind of pointless. You know, you have to be a little bit unique now in your outreach. I'm pretty sure almost every creative director or executive producer has gotten that exact templated email within the past month, at least within the past hour. And so, I found out very quickly, just being normal, like being a human being when you're talking to someone, even over DM, it sounds hard to do because you're just text and an avatar, but just kind of talking how you would talk to like your best friend is the thing that's worked the most for me. Anytime I reach out on LinkedIn, I know it's like the spam central, but it works even there for me. When I just talk to somebody like, yo, what's up, dude? I love X startup, you know, when you guys build this? Or if like I see something even, you know, that they've done on their post on the timeline that's like they're a skateboarder, you know, it doesn't even have to be tangentially related to their startup world or whatever thing they're working on or their company. It could just be like, what's your best trick? I love skateboarding, though my knees are getting, you know, shat on because I'm old now. Kind of thing. Like just saying something or anything that's like, you know, human, personable, anything of that sorts. I kind of just cut out all those email templates right out the gate because it just doesn't work anymore, in my opinion. Yeah, you know, it might work for others. And other than that, I would say that another tip would be just qualifying, doing your best to qualify clients before you kind of reach out to them. I don't use this workflow too much anymore, but it still worked even as of recently. But what I would do is, for my startup world skill set, was I would go to Product Hunt. And on Product Hunt, like I mentioned before, is where they post their explainer video for their whole launch day. And there's a whole list. But what you can do is you can categorize to top launches of the month or of the week. You can pick your poison there. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the top launches of the month have either already had funding because they did such a stellar job in preparation, or they're getting funding now because they got so much popularity off the launch. And then once I pick a couple of, you know, the startups that I think might be really cool to do animation for, based off the fact whether they've actually done animation before, that one's actually really helpful because then I know, okay, they're actually in the market. They know what the hell animation actually is, kind of thing. I'll look at, okay, like which one actually looks pretty or which one fits the style that I'm able to produce, because I have a reputation too. I can't like promise extravagant 3D stuff if I can't do that, right? And I'm more risk averse now to just say like I know how to do something when I don't, because I know like the technical capabilities you'd have to have in those things, and I also know the timelines in this startup world too. And so I balance that. But after I've kind of like qualified that small element on Product Hunt, I'll go to Crunchbase. Crunchbase is this really cool site where you can see like the funding of certain startups. And if they're popular enough, which based off Product Hunt, that's like a popular realm inside of the Silicon Valley air space. You can see if they've actually confirmed funding. And a lot of the times you'll see like, hey, they're in pre-seed, or they're seed round, or they're Series A, which are just different, levels of funding. And usually I try to look for like Series A to seed. And those will be like the sweet spot for me, where like, you're not too big of a company where you have to send me to like, or where you're hiring like out to agencies and stuff like that. And then I'd have to look for those agencies that are doing work for you. And you're not too small of a company where you just can't even afford me. and you still have someone that's like a human being that's like still hiring, like doing the hiring, looking out for individuals like me to do work like for your animation and stuff like that. So that's what I found is the sweet spot. But all in all, this is like just to say, really qualify your clients. Just doing all that upfront work will, as far as it's worked for me, provides a lot more value than just like shotgunning your resume, as if you will, to all of the people that you could do work for. I really want to put an emphasis on qualifying like the type of people that you want to do work for. Wanting to do work for something like the example I gave prior to, where there was just a ton of automation, it wasn't fulfilling, and I quickly learned right there, like that's not something I'd ever want to do again. So making sure that like whether it's the design is super pretty to you, or you have some sort of contact there where you've already kind of talked to that you're going to be ending up working with, right? Like knowing you can vibe with that person beforehand is a really great check. Or anything of the sort that just makes you feel like that gut feeling where you're like, okay, I'm down for this. Like, let's do this. And then the last thing is just like, you don't have to reach out to the executive producers, the creative directors. You can, and that definitely helps. And if you're buddies with them, 100%, take that swing. But I found just connecting with other motion designers or leads or juniors has been like way more cooler and awesome, just because like obviously you can relate on what you do for work, but you understand the struggles behind it as well. And that's probably the more deeper level that like a lot of people feel isolated in their work sometimes, just because like you and I, Grant, we can go to like our aunt or our grandma or mom, they won't know what the hell animation is, and then that's kind of like where that conversation gets cut, you know what I mean? Like they'll look at live action footage and like, oh, is that animation? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, grandma, yeah, that's what it is. But if you're talking to other animators and you're just looking to make a friend, really, it's like looking to make a friend first, not business. You'll make that connect, and then it might just fall into place where you get a job or a gig with them at the company that they work at. I say my strategy is very active as far as qualifying, but very passive as far as connecting with people. I don't want to feel like I'm ever doing car salesman again. So that's the main overarching, I guess, concept of how I find work.
I love that for two reasons. The first reason is you talk about, going back to you just talking about skateboarding and so forth, and talking to somebody like, hey, what's your favorite trick? Things like that. And I think it's such a low hanging fruit, but I think a lot of people don't tend to do it. And that is, there's like the very obvious, like, here is who you are up here, your title, all that fun stuff. And then like right below, it's like a little bit of your personality and things like that. And when reaching out to someone, I feel like generally what I see on my end is people will reach out and they'll only kind of be at that top level. They'll be like, hello, I know you do this. That's cool. Job? Things like that. Yeah. And it's like, I get it. Market's awful right now, but the people who didn't go like the one step a little bit like to that next level, which I guess I'm doing inverted right now. That's like an iceberg, if you will. Yeah. Do that come and say, hey, like, I watched an episode of DESIGNish. I don't know if they watched it or not, but I think they say something about it. Or they're like, hey, like, I see that you're into Dungeons and Dragons, things like that. Immediate, way better connector. And I'm like more open to talking to them. And it's like, I think it's really not a time consuming thing to like look at that. For instance, we can look at like Jen Van Horn, for instance. I've seen her stuff on my LinkedIn like multiple times. And eventually I was like, like this is someone I want to interview or something like that. And I already knew she did like cooking. So I was like, cool, we can talk about cooking. And very easy to connect there. Even made one of her recipes and so forth. Very low energy, right to the next thing. I'm not going, hey, Jen, you're a motion designer. Interview? Things like that. Because I'm like, there's more to it. There's more to everybody. Not everybody's just like their job role or, whatever. Like you said, it's just talk to them about their hobbies, talk to them about what they like to do. And then it also shows that you cared enough to value them beyond just an opportunity, which is not great. You don't ever want to look like that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other thing too is you talk about going like product hunt, and that's kind of like, we're not going to call it a job board, because job boards, like, you're going to like Indeed or LinkedIn or something like that. But it's like an opportunity board, because they may not actively be looking for work. They are giving work to people. They may not actively be looking for it, but these, like you said, are people who you want to work with once you qualify them. And so you're reaching up to them to see the opportunity. And I challenge anyone who's listening to this to start thinking in opportunity board mindsets, because like product hunt for you as a giant opportunity board. I know for me, like, I would even go on Steam. You can go on Steam and look at games that you like, and then look at the publishers. Go talk to the publishers. That is an opportunity board. You may not be actively looking for that work right now to provide that work to you or whatever, but that is an opportunity board. It's just full of different people you can reach out to based on what you're interested in, talk to them. I think once that when someone shifts that mindset, it can look a little bit more difficult, because you don't know. You're casting a wider net, and you're hoping that, hope I catch something, and you may not, whatever. Again, not everybody's hiring because they're not posting jobs, but it does build stronger connections for future work as well. It shows what you're passionate about. It lets you kind of focus in on what you're passionate about and kind of build relationships and things like that. So it's cool, man. It's cool to see you did that. It's cool to see you had that opportunity board mindset and, work for you. It's cool that you had a checks and balances system where you're going from product hunt to, what was the other one again?
Oh, Crunchbase.
So, you're checking to say, hey, does this even make sense? Things like that. So, overall, I think that's a lot of insight right there for anybody who's listening to, like, hey, checks and balances, look for who you want to work with, treat places like opportunity boards, and, it's unconventional. It's not going to be just a job posting on Indeed. It's going to be in other places too. Maybe you go on Spotify. That's what I used to do as well. You go on Spotify, find artists you like, reach out to those artists, and then you're like, hey, I'm looking for stuff. What we got? You can work with, I had a chance to like make like a social filter for like Roman Silver, which is really cool. And it was just because I liked the dude's music, and I saw him like being the next coming up kind of person to hit. And I was like, cool, let's go talk to him. I like his music. I get it. I vibe with it. I understand it. And we worked some from there. So it's like, just talk to people you want to talk to.
And I think even oddly enough, the farther away it is from the thing you could potentially get work for, on as far as like the connection point to that person, the more likely it is you're going to be a friend to that person, and then maybe even get work down the road. Because like you said, like, hi, my name is this job. Like that's I probably used to work before because people were scrambling to look for animators, but not now. It's more people based now. So yeah, and I love that Steam strat. I did something similar with a Bandcamp as far as musicians go, but that Steam one I didn't think of at all. That's crazy. So you'd go down the list of games that like you'd like to play, for example, or like to do work for, and then you'd find the publisher, and then
sometimes it was a game where like it would be like an indie game where I'm like, oh man, like we'll take Tunic for example. If you're familiar with the game Tunic, it's like a little fox character who's basically Legend of Zelda. It's a little indie game that came out, and I saw like previews back when it was first like, hey, here's what we're working on, and I was like, dope, I like it, I like the aesthetic, I like the concept, I want to jump on this and work with them. They said no, unfortunately, because I think they actually already had a group internally to work on that kind of stuff. But like that was something right there where pops up later on Steam, ends up being a pretty successful indie game, and just they did post a job posting, nothing like that, but it was something I saw, it was cool, and I was like, I want to be a part of that. I'll still do that. Sometimes I'll go on Steam, I'll look at like indie games who they may not pop out, they may not, but I look at them like that's kind of cool. Want to get involved there. Maybe you see a studio or a publisher like Devolver Digital where you're like, same thing, I want to get involved there. They may not have any job postings for an animator or motion designer on their website. Doesn't mean you can't reach out to them.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, that was Emilio Lopez. Again, a fantastic 2D and 3D motion designer with experience across the board, really working with startups, social media, so forth. So overall, very awesome. Emilio, thank you for your time to talk to me today, man. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Fortunately, the recording got a little messed up right here, but make sure to find Emilio Lopez on his website at emiliowave.myportfolio.com. You can also find him on Instagram as well at Emilio Wave, and finally on LinkedIn as well at Emilio Wave. Wave is WAV, like the sound file, not wave like WAVE, like water coming in. So make sure to check him out.